Hi, this is Jerry Huntman from IFWG Publishing. Uh, our company, over the next several weeks, are going to be publishing something like 4 books and all new titles, and that makes us very busy people indeed. With our new format, with our YouTube channel and social media, these are real opportunities to talk to the authors and get into their heads. I think that really makes a difference when you buy a book and read a book, knowing what the author has said about it. And yeah, maybe it's also very interesting as well. Today is a special day, actually. It is the 30th of September, and with luck, we'll have this out on the 30th of September as well. We're going to be interviewing S.K. Nielsen, Sarah Nielsen, who's written a fantastic fantasy novel called Singing Down the Sky. So, without further ado, I will introduce you to her. Hello,
Hello, Jerry.
how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. Now you're talking to me from Adelaide, aren't you?
Yes, just outside Adelaide.
Okay. Is it hot?
Cooler today. We got rain today, which was nice.
Oh, lucky you. I'm from the Gold Coast, so I'm saying these things because we get audience from all over the world. So Adelaide is in sort of the middle lower part of Australia, and I'm far east, halfway up roughly. But anyway, yeah. So it's a good day regardless because congratulations, you have just published your book.
Thank you. Very exciting.
Now, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the availability of the book at the end of this interview. The I won't go too much into it. There's a little bit of a nuance for Australian and New Zealand fans, so we'll talk about that towards the end. But to be honest with you, what we really want to do more than anything else is to talk about you and also to talk about your book and really the interface between you and the book. Now, so let's talk about you first. We don't have to make it. I won't agonize you by doing lots and lots of time. But look, give us a little bit of an idea of who you are, what makes you who you are, and how you got into writing.
Sure. So I've been a book lover, so a reader and a writer ever since I was quite young. And I got a lot of enjoyment just living in the other worlds in books as a child and then as I grew up. And I think I've always wanted, it sounds like a stereotype, but I've always wanted to publish a book. I've always wanted to be an author. And after I finished school, my other great love is for animals. And so I took that direction as a career into working in the animal industry and animal health. And that's given me a lot of insight into the human animal bond, actually, which is part of my writing. That's something I'm very passionate about. And so it was about so I've always written, and then around about 2012 or so, I decided, okay, I'm going to really, knuckle down. I've got some qualifications in professional writing, but I thought I really want to pursue this more as a profession. And I signed up to do Bryce Courtney's last masterclass. And in that class, we were given an exercise to read a story extract to the class. And so I thought, I'm going to challenge myself and I'll write my extract the night, the day or two before we have to do this exercise. Sorry, my dog is making his bed on the sofa in the background. So I was waiting for my turn, and some of my classmates read their stories out before me, and they had quite polished work. I think they'd written before the masterclass, and they read this very powerful and compelling work. There was a couple of fantasy stories, and I sat there and I was sort of shaking in my boots, thinking, God, I'm going to sound like a real fraud. And so I got up in front of the class, clutching this microphone. I'd never spoken into a microphone before, and I had this story about a dog that ate a pair of underpants, and so I sort of sat there thinking, I don't hold a candle to these people that have just gone before me, and but I read my story, and everyone laughed in all the right places, and I got quite good feedback on this little extract, and so that was a penny drop sort of moment when I realised that that was my voice, and that was my identity as a writer. With that, even though it wasn't a fantasy, which is my really big passion in reading and writing, but it was just finding my voice and that confidence in myself and my voice as a writer, and that's I've just kind of kept following that path.
Okay. I mean, this is really interesting that you talk about finding your voice in relative terms early. So does that mean, I mean, do you feel your voice has changed, dramatically changed, or is it really just a simple case of development?
I think over time it has changed and developed, and I think as time goes on and we read more and watch more and we're exposed to different things, I think sometimes we pick up a bit of that in by osmosis with different authors and different voices and things that resonate with me. So, for example, with humour in fiction, I really like Joe Abercrombie's humour. The Rivers of London series by Ben Aronovich. They're things, and I don't write that way. I don't write grimdark. I don't write urban fantasy in that manner. But it just helped me to see that there are ways that you can bring a little bit of humour in and a bit of wryness and make that. I think it's just little things like that, little influences that you pick up and inspiration that you pick up, but with your own stamp on it. I think we all write differently. I don't want to sound like anyone else. I want to have my own voice, and so that's what I look for in my writing.
No, that's really good. I mean, I just find that really interesting that you found that you sort of realised that, if that's the right word, quite early in the context of when we're talking now. In my experience as a publisher, I get a lot of new writers, and many of them. It's a big hurdle. I wouldn't say hurdle. That hurdle is an unfair word. It's a big part of the journey to really get that uniqueness, that voice that's them, and
Sure.
realize, no, you don't need to do it sort of like that. You can do it this way, your way instead. So this is music to my ears, what I'm hearing, basically. So I really like that. Okay, so you mentioned fantasy, and that's a good segue because obviously the book is fantasy. You also mentioned that what it isn't, right? Because what you don't write grimdark, for example,
Correct. Yes.
or urban fantasy. And boy, oh boy, they're quite different.
They sure are.
But describe what fields in fantasy, even if it's just narrow, that's okay. But just describe the type of fantasy that really you enjoy writing and enjoy world building in.
Sure. So I guess with this particular story with Singing Down the Sky, when I was first writing it, something that I had in the back of my mind, there was a bit of fatigue with fantasy at the time, reader fatigue. I think people were looking for something different to the traditional sort of fantasy with the knights and the castles and the Northern Hemisphere and the snow and the mountains up north, and the princesses and kings and queens sort of story. And I thought, we have something really unique in Australia with our landscape and our environment and our folklores and things that we look at as a culture. We're a bit isolated from the rest of the world, and how can I bring that into my writing, and how can I use that in my writing? And I think so that that was also part of what I thought about. I want to see more of Australia in fantasy fiction. Glenda Lark's an Australian author whose writing I really like. She doesn't do the dragons and the castles at all. She's an Australian author, and I really enjoy the way that she just drip feeds little Easter eggs of Australia and aspects and just little language through her stories, and I love the way that she writes. I mean, her characters are fantastic, really fabulous, strong female characters. So she's one of the authors I'd probably compare myself to a little bit in my writing, just in that approach to what she writes and how.
Hmm. Okay, so you're okay. So you've presented, you answered my question from a particular dimension, which is the language and the culture. Perhaps, if you didn't mind me distilling it down to just those
Sure,
two words.
sure.
Um, you also mentioned that you don't no dragons, no princes and kings and things. Yeah, fully get that. Um, how much, without giving anything away, uh, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because I want people to really understand at least what they're getting if they buy your book.
Sure.
So you mentioned fantasy, and you got and there's some Australianism in it. But I mean, is there magic? Is there are there races? Is there how if there are humans, are they like us? That sort of thing. Give us a bit of a,
Sure.
without giving too much away.
Sure. So it's certainly I don't really have other species of made up species in the story. It is based on human characters
Yeah.
in a human world. It's a secondary world. It is the setting has a lot of Australian landscapes, and so it's not Australia, but it rather than having pine forests or fir trees, there's eucalyptus trees and bushland and scrub and beaches, and that sort of it's set in a southern hemisphere, so it's a bit upside down to what we often see in the fantasy stories,
Mm.
as I said before, with our cold mountains in the north and the snow in the north sort of setting. So um, the landscape is Australian inspired, I guess, and I I think often with when we look at Australia in popular culture, the landscape is often a very hostile place for the characters to be. So, things like Wolf Creek, we've got very isolated and vulnerable characters, and that's how the Australian setting is often used. And of course, in reality, it can be a very harsh place. It can be a deadly place, but there's also beauty in that as well. And I really wanted that to try and bring in those elements of that environmental beauty into the setting of my story. And I another aspect that I pulled into it was very much the Australian. So I drew on aspects of Australian language and the rhythm of our speech and how we speak, and slanguage as well. So there's a bit of slang language in there that draws from some Australian culture, and that sort of helps. That's part of the character building that I've done as well in the story.
No, that sounds great. I mean, and by the way, that's how I read it too. The
Great.
That's right. And also, I mean, when I read books, look. I'm an Australian publisher. We're based in Australia, but all of our infrastructure and our supply chain is centered in the United States, and 90% of our sales are in North America. So when I read a book, I do two things. I read it to see if it's totally digestible for a non-Australian, if it was written by an Australian. And I do the same with New Zealanders and British as well. And also I just want to make sure that especially the slanguage. Uh, there's no point, no need to have a footnote. Normally, 99% of the time, slang words and whatever just becomes contextualized. You understand what they're trying to say, and to be honest with you, I believe that many of the American audience feedback I get is that they actually like it. But anyway, so that's just my little point. But the reason why I'm saying that is because I read your book, and it's totally digestible. I mean, and in fact, if anything, it's more than digestible, because digestible is the bare minimum. Uh, it's digestible, in other words, it's understandable. But I think that other readers from other countries and other cultures will pick up an exoticism there, and I think that's what you want. Um, you want exoticism without it being alien, if that makes sense. Uh, Sorry, this is my little talking. Um, but I just wanted to say that I think you've done an excellent job. That was probably the main reason why, in fact, we were very, very happy indeed to and honoured to publish your book. Uh, so there.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it is something at the back of my mind. And I think as fantasy writers, we are a bit lucky that our readers are already suspending their sense of belief when they pick up a book. So I think they're already more open to diving into something where it might be a bit unusual or foreign to begin with when you're reading it. But you know that it's fantasy, and you know that it will be explained as you go. And I, with this language in the book, and some of the language in the drafting and the editing processes and my beta reading processes, there were some things that I had to draw back on because people didn't quite understand it. And I think, as you said, with the context, providing a bit of context in the characters' actions and the storyline, I think that hopefully in my writing that's helped explain any of the terms or phrases that might have otherwise been a little bit. I hope I've done a good job in giving that context to what things might mean.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, and 100% support your point. Um, okay, right, right. We've talked about fantasy. We've got a bit of an idea of your book in terms of context and where it's located. Uh, Now, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but I mean, I think we have to. There's some things you just got to talk about, and it won't give too much away anyway. I mean, one of the other things that I liked about your book was it had an extremely strong matriarchal society or subculture that existed there, or a part of that world, and not because it was matriarchal, because matriarchal societies do exist in many other fantasy books and science fiction books and what have you. But I actually feel that you treated it quite uniquely and interestingly. Um, Tell us about how you came to paint that particular nuance, and tell us a little bit about how you wanted to make it interesting, if that's the right word.
Sure. So I guess going back to the concept of the story, it really started with the marriage of convenience idea, which is the theme that brings the two main characters, Tali, the female main character, and Yulo, the male main character, together. And the idea, it came from, I was thinking about the mail order brides, the modern day mail order brides, and I thought, what if I flipped that narrative? So I had a really smart and educated woman with a bit of money and some assets behind her who needed to buy a husband for some reason. And then I thought the husband, I wanted him to be the exact polar opposite. And Yulo, my male main character, I guess he's come a bit out of that typical Australian male stereotype, a bit like the crocodile hunter, Crocodile Dundee. That was sort of where his character came from. Bit of that Hugh Jackman type of cheekiness, but that really old stereotype that we used to see on TV a lot, maybe 40 years ago, that a lot of people overseas would know through, for example, Crocodile Dundee. And so it was a really fun character trope to explore. But then I had this question of why would my really smart, capable female main character marry someone like that in the first place? And if she's a woman that's really in charge of her own destiny, she's successful and smart, then where does that come from? So that so I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, everyone.
I
There's a
might have
dog
to
there.
kick.
We've got
He's
3
playing
people
with a
here, not 2.
football. Yes. So I'll just repeat that a little bit because I'm not sure where the dog started interrupting. But so with Tali being in charge of her own destiny, I thought about where does that come from? Is that part of her culture? So what if she came from a culture where women were really well esteemed and more powerful in society and politics, and that was sort of part of that flipping that marriage of convenience narrative a little bit. And so then it seemed logical that if she's in that sort of position, then she might come from a matriarchal society. So that was actually something that was inspired a little bit by Australian elements as well. So back in World War II, when Australia's men went and joined our allies overseas, there were labour shortages that we just didn't have enough people to do all the work to keep the country running on the ground. So women stepped into a lot of those roles. There were things like the Australian Women's Land Army working on the land and in agriculture, and also there were opportunities for women to engage more directly in politics. So with that sort of as an idea floating in the back of my mind, I thought, so in Tali's world, in her country, which is called Silver Rain, what if there was a parallel to that, but when the men came back from war, what if the women didn't want to give the country back? They wanted to keep their power and their new status. And that was kind of the premise on how the matriarchy of her country had come about. But it was very important to me that the matriarchy had agency, but in a democratic way with a balanced society. I didn't want it to be an oppressive sort of society or one with a token female leader or a dictator, sort of a female dictator running the country. And I mean, while the nitty gritty of the politics is a little bit in the background in the story, men are still considered important in society. They have some status as decision makers and advisors in the political system, but ultimately it's the women that are running the show.
No, look, yeah, that's a really good description. That's how I took it. I found it actually. What I found interesting in your answer just then was that what you did was you also didn't just talk about the matriarchal society, how it came to be, but you actually described your thought process, your creative process in developing the novel. Because I mean, you came up, you talk about the first idea was the swapping over of the the convenient bride or husband in this particular case, but yeah, you talked about how you actually literally got the seed to grow into the tree of what is the story. So no, I like that. I like that a lot. And I mean, certainly from my perspective as a reader, and I'm happy to talk as a reader, not just a publisher. I did find and the nuances within that matriarchal society very, very convincing and very interesting, and made it unique because, as you pointed out, or at least inferred, quite often when a writer, whether it's television, movies, whatever, quite often they try to go the extreme with the matriarchal trope,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you didn't do it, so you skipped you avoided the pitfalls of possibly making mistakes with a full-on matriarchy. So I think that's really good. So I
Great.
love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, look, you mentioned the Tali and Yulo getting together in the most unusual way. And again, that's unique as well, which I like. Uh, how difficult, maybe it was easy, was it to not only develop their characters, but sustain all the way through the development of their relationship and the intricacies and complexities of it. And there was
Mhm.
a lot of intricacies and complexity, not overly complex, but it had a lot of three dimensionality to it, and there was a lot of stuff. How did you
Sure.
do that?
So, I guess thinking about it, so Tali's background is that she's educated, she's got experience traveling, and she's a businesswoman. Her background is that she farms livestock. She sells cattle and horses, and she sells these silver iron blades that are really coveted. They're these incredible weapons that are really beautiful and easy to use and very lethal. So there's quite a high demand for them. So her country is not really a fighting country, but Yulo's country is. So that's kind of why she ends up over in his country deciding to buy herself a husband in the first place. And she relies on that trade. So she needs to understand the trade overseas and who her customers are. And in the case of these blades, that's Yulo's people, who he comes from I guess a bit of their country's run by a warlord. They don't have the money. They've got a corrupt government, so they kind of struggle a bit. It's a bit of a struggle town kind of country, and his background's as a mercenary, so. He's really the fish out of water in the story. He's going overseas for the first time. He's coming out of this Wild West type country and into her matriarchal society, which is very different to what he's used to. He's from a world where men are men, spit bouncers, and her country all relies on wits and diplomacy. So there's quite a contrast in what they're doing. And I guess he's got debts. He's got people after him, chasing him for money, and he doesn't want to admit that to Tali. He doesn't want to look stupid in marrying her. He doesn't want to give away his reasons for marrying her, and likewise, she's got her secrets, and they're secrets that might kill her, and they're valuable secrets that the people chasing him would really like to know that she's got. So there's sort of an element of risk in her getting involved in him, but neither of them really quite knows it. I guess, again, thinking about sort of flipping the narratives a little bit, even with her personality. So early on, I got some feedback in the beta reading, and it said, why don't you make Tali really clumsy when she's dressed up in high heels and a dress, because she's an outdoorsy person? Why don't you make her a bit awkward? And I thought, well, I know a lot of women that can wear high heels just as well as they can wear riding boots. So why can't she be the same? And if we're going to make anyone awkward, let's make it him. So that was sort of, and that fit quite well with his background and his storyline of being this sort of, he's a bit of a thug, and he comes into this very cultured world that he just doesn't really know how to handle it. And I guess what helped to help them to work together, I suppose, was they're in a business transaction. So, she's a businesswoman. She kind of understands that. He's a mercenary. He takes money to do jobs, so he understands that as well. They have a fixed time frame, but they realize it's in each other's interest to help and support each other to get to that end goal of the end of the marriage. And they had that common goal, even though they've got their own motivations floating around underneath, and those secrets that I mentioned before.
Okay, all right. You've expressed already a fair amount of the complexity there. And there's more, of course, and you quite correctly, and if I can read you correctly, is that we didn't want to reveal too much either.
No.
Yeah. Okay, look, the I mean, I think I don't think that I want to talk too much more about the book itself anymore, and the reason why is because I think we've revealed a lot, and I don't want to spoil anything.
Sure,
But what the writing process? Let's just talk about the writing process, and we'll finish with that. Uh,
sure.
the what is it? Does writing come easy to you, or is it something that you need to work hard with? What's your method of writing?
Um, so in this book, it did because I really liked the characters and particularly Yulo. So I had a lot of motivation to get, I constantly sort of had them in my mind doing stuff that I had to get down on the page. And I don't plan when I write, which is a bit of a contrast to my personality. I like to feel like things are in order and under control, but I find if I plan when I write, I just get bored, stupid, and I lose interest in whatever I'm doing.
So you're a
So
pantser, right? You're a pantser.
yeah, or a gunslinger, as
Mm.
Fiona McIntosh calls it. I like that term with
Mm.
the Wild West sort of connotation. But I usually have a gist of where the story's going in my mind, but I don't really know where it's going to end up until the words are on the page. And it gives me motivation to keep writing, but it does have that risk that you kind of go off on tangents and end up getting a bit lost in downside paths and things, and you've got to bring yourself back from that. So it might not be the most efficient approach to writing, but it gets the story written. I guess that's my approach.
I mean, the reason why pantsers exist is because they exist. I mean, yeah, or gunslingers, as Fiona would say, as you said. No, look, that's good. Look, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Uh, I think we covered a lot, and the I certainly loved the book. I wouldn't have published it if I didn't, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of readers who will enjoy reading your book. I find it interesting because of that Australian thing that I think a lot of Australian readers might enjoy it because it'll give them feelings of nostalgia, perhaps. And as I already mentioned before, I think readers from other English-speaking countries may find it interesting because it gives them an insight into some of the nuances of Australian language and aspects of culture, and of course the environment,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
very important. So that's great. Now, look, before I close off completely, I just wanted to just say a few words to prospective readers. Just wanted to mention this. As I said before, IFWG is an Australian company, and large percentage of our writers are Australian as well. And I think this interview is a perfect example of that. We are actually our supply chain. Our distributor is based in the United States. We've got a wonderful relationship with distributors in other countries like New South Books in Sydney for Australia and New Zealand. But one little tricky thing is that sometimes there's a bit of a lag in getting the books into Australia because they're mostly printed in North America. Um, and I will say, without going into a lot of detail, that the current tariff situation that's existing in the world today has complicated things a little bit for us. The net result is that there's something like about a week or two delay for books getting into the warehouses in Australia. So, despite the fact that it's the world release day today, the 30th of September, the books will not be available for a week or two for Australian and New Zealand readers. Now, there are some retailers who will potentially show the sorry about that, will potentially show um, pre-order pre-orders and Australian ones, and they will be often showing the price of the book at a very high level because they're sourcing it from America because they don't know that there are books coming to Australia soon. So now the price of this particular book is $29.95. If the price is higher than $29.95, I would ask you to be patient eventually that price will drop to $29.95 or lower, and that's the time when you should order the book or pre-order the book, depending on the timing. The ebooks are available now, regardless. That's all good. So I'm sorry about that little bit of nuance, but the only reason why I'm saying that is because, unfortunately, we live in a world that's not perfect, and being in Australia, and I think it was mentioned that we are in an isolated country, and we certainly are. There's a big Pacific between us and the United States, and that does things. So, but I do recommend very much that you eventually pre-order or order. It's a wonderful book, and I think it's already been expressed very well in this interview. So, thank you so much, Sarah, for being
Thank you.
my guest, and I bid everyone adieu.
Goodbye.